So I decided to make another Xsgaming group talk video, and I asked the group on Facebook, yay or nay on emulation. Let's see what they had to say. Now, I thought this would be a really good subject because I think this is kind of taboo when it comes to collecting. Some people, they're completely for it, some people are completely against it. I thought it would be a great melting pot to see where anyone's perspectives are on this sort of thing. And surprisingly, there was a lot of great responses, a lot of logical responses I heard that I really agreed with. And the first one we'll start off with Aaron Reviewer. He says, emulation preserves gaming and it is great. Also ROM hacking and overpriced games, etc. I 1 million quadruple loop-de-loop % support it. I couldn't count all those zeros, but that's a lot of zeros. Al says 100% yay, no question. I want to be able to play a game first and foremost, and if that means some obscure arcade title on a MAME arcade cab or whatever, I'm fine with that. If you're collecting just to say that I'm the only one who can play this game, then you're in it for the wrong reasons. Emulation allows games to live on and be enjoyed and be a greater audience. That it is surely more than important than massaging your ego. Next is from Chris. He says, yays. I think it's a good way to try out an older game before you buy it. I don't mind paying a lot of money for a game if I really enjoy playing it through emulation, and of course when I save up enough. But another thing I like about it is it's really easy to record game footage. There are ROM hacks, fan-made games, etc. I'm always welcome to it. Next is from Devin. He says, I say yes. Some of the games that are out there are way too expensive. Let's face it, do we really want to pay $500 for a game that may not be worth it later on? Jim, aka Kitcherukin, says, nothing wrong with emulation if you ask me. Not everybody has deep pockets, and even those who have an expendable income from time to time don't necessarily want to spend hundreds on a single game, as if sometimes that's the case. Sometimes emulation is a great way to ensure that everyone gets to enjoy games regardless of their financial state. That to me is a good thing. Next is from Mark. He says, if no other option to play a certain game, yay, but I am a strong believer of getting the original source of games, so I try to stick with cartridges or disc. Okay, Rick says I support it, especially if it comes to older games which can be really hard to find for a decent price on, and I think it's a nice to play console games on the computer. Tyler says it's a yay because some people may not have enough money to buy an arcade cabinet of their favorite game, so I'm all for it. Altana Melendez, she says, I'm all for it if more people preferred it to the game prices and go back down so I could get back into collecting. And yeah, that was some of the responses I got from the group page. Some people just said yay. They didn't really say what were the reasons. They were just all for it. And surprisingly, I didn't get a lot of negative responses about emulation, which makes me believe it's because retro gaming has become so much more expensive in just the last 5 years. You know, when I started my YouTube channel about 4 years ago, I remember there were games that were $30 to $40, which for me that was way too much to spend on the NES game, and now they're up to $60, $70, maybe even $100 loose. I mean, it's all about you know, supply and demand. Retro collecting has gotten really popular, so the games have really went up, and a lot of people, you know, I admit a lot of people collect games just to show them off. They don't really care about the games. They just want to say, hey, I have, you know, say example Earthbound on the Super Nintendo. It's like brownie points within the community. It's a virtual pat on the back. Me personally, I have no problems with emulation. I have a lot of games, but honestly, I don't have all the money in the world to be buying some of the games I really want to play, and I can go on an emulation, I can play ROMs, I can play arcade games, I can play imports with English patches, I can play homebrew games. And what's nice is, you know, even though you're playing it on the PC, you can use like an Xbox 360 controller. I use a PS4 controller for all my emulation, but you can also get like Super Nintendo controllers or NES controllers via USB or adapter, you can actually hook up and play these emulators. Now, if you don't want to take the computer route, they have other options as well. One console I really love, and I feel like people don't love it enough, and that is the Ouya. Ouya didn't really lift off when it came to a standalone console, but is a great little emulation box. I mean, I got everything from NES to Sega Genesis to TurboGrafx to Neo Geo to arcade titles, PlayStation. I have them all on the little Ouya, and it's going through HDMI, so I can play it on my nice television and not have to worry about a frame meister to upscale these older games or anything like that. And Chris brought up a good point. He said it's really easy to record game footage with, and I do that a lot with my game footage and also Let's Plays, because it's a lot easier just to have one source and just have the games there than, you know, unhook the Super Nintendo, hook up the capture card, and you gotta find certain capture cards that support AV or S-Video and stuff like that, unless you have a Retron 5. But to tell you the truth, if you have a Retron 5, you are playing through emulation, because they are taking the ROMs and going straight into the console, and you can play it through there. So it's funny, there's some people that are completely against it. They'd rather have the cart, the disc, the consoles, and I'm like that too, but at the same time, it's got to the point now that if you want to just enjoy the games, you gotta have a more open mind and enjoy emulation. I'm like Mark. If I had the choice, I would rather have the game. I'm a big fan of physical media, and I love to put it on my shelf and, you know, take it down and hook it up and play it. That would be amazing, but sometimes that's not always the case. Now, so you got the Ouya, you got the Retron 5. Also, don't forget, you also have the Raspberry Pi. I am not talking about a dessert pastry to play your Sega Genesis games on. I'm talking about a what looks like a small computer. You can actually get different casings for it, and these little computers can be as low as $9.99. They are super cheap, and they have lots of memory on it. You can put an open source operating system. Most people use Linux, and you can just put so many emulators, so many ROMs, and you can hook up an external hard drive to it and just go to town. You can have one thing that plays everything and just enjoy it. So yeah, I'm all about emulation. There's so many games that I would have never gotten to play if it wasn't for emulation, especially a lot of Japanese games, because I've downloaded English patches and played those, including games like Mother 3 and the first Mother, and, you know, Ys 5, you know, stuff like that. So it's nice, you know, having that option to play some of these games that unfortunately, you know, a couple of years ago we couldn't do, and emulation has came a long way. The emulation for these ROMs have really picked up, and some of them look spot on perfect. But what are your thoughts about this, guys? What do you guys think about emulation? Yay or nay? And if you haven't yet, be sure to join the Xsgaming Podcast group page community on Facebook. I have a link right here, and it's also in the description. You know, I have a lot of newcomers that come to the group, and they ask me, is it okay if I share my YouTube channel? Is it okay if I share my podcast? I have a blog. Is that okay? Yes. Even though this group page is focused on Xsgaming Podcast wouldn't be what it is without you guys. So I definitely encourage you guys to share your content and let other people see what kind of stuff you're cooking up. I would love to see it too, so be sure to check it out. As always, guys, thanks for watching, thanks for subscribing. Tell me your thoughts on emulation, yay or nay, and happy gaming. Can't get enough of Xsgaming Podcast? Be sure to check out our audio podcast on Podomag.com. You can also subscribe to us on iTunes. And if you have a YouTube channel or podcast you'd like to share, be sure to check us out on Facebook on our group page and join the community. As always, guys, thank you so much for all the support, and happy gaming.